And I tell people actually, in trying to start a business, the most important decision is not like, can you get somebody who's technically apt to help you out on the software side? It's, can you find the right business partner? Or can you get some traction providing value to your customer or prospective customer? That's the most important thing. And the smartest entrepreneurs that I know, they spend the most amount of time talking to prospects and customers, and building extremely simple solutions, not just diving into the tech. I think as an outsider, you're often like, I have an idea for some technology, and the challenge that you face is, how can I build this technology? But that's actually probably not the most common.
Hello and welcome to the Red Bearded Risk Guy podcast, the show that helps business owners and leaders with companies of 50 to 250 employees to protect their people, profits, and public relations. We help business owners maximize profits by minimizing their total cost of risk. Your host, Joshua Keene, also known as the Red Bearded Risk Guy, is a commercial insurance and benefits and risk management expert in the Pacific Northwest, but he has dedicated his career to helping businesses stay ahead of emerging business trends on all business-related challenges, not just risk and insurance. So we will get into interviews with industry experts on everything from strategy and growth to sales and marketing, corporate risk management, commercial insurance, and even motivation. These weekly conversations will provide actionable advice on the latest trends, challenges, and opportunities facing the business community. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and strategically position your business for success, then this podcast is for you. Tune in to the Red Bearded Risk Guy and join the conversation today. And also, while you're at it, be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and leave a review. Thanks for being here. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Red Bearded Risk Guy podcast. I am your host, Joshua Keene, and today we have the founder and CEO of Wunderite, Peter MacDonald. And as an insurance person, I'm one of the first people to bring up some of the issues with technology in our world, and we're doing our best to catch up, but we are definitely behind a lot of other industries when it comes to technology. But Peter here has some great solutions with Wunderite to help bring us up to speed and make customer experience and agent experience easier, and a great story about his business and starting his business. So I will go ahead and let you take it away, Peter. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I was an insurance agent, probably not unlike you are right now, for 7.5 years. Had my insurance licenses and designations so that I could do the best possible work for my customers to, really dive into their insurance contracts, make sure they have the right protection, et cetera. And I think one of the things that I found, Joshua, is that we spent a lot of time doing a lot of admin work, and then a lot of the data that we captured in the process. Not only was it a lot of friction for the customer, have to fill out all this paperwork, and friction for the team to fill it out and like scan it and file it. The information, it was only really useful for that renewal or that new business application, and it wasn't really useful after that. And I thought, what a shame that we're spending all this time and we're jumping through hoops and we're making our customers do all this work just to market their insurance one time, and not actually to use that for risk management. So for example, if you ask your customer, do you have a firewall? And they say no. It's like, well, that's a data point. Like, you should use that for risk management. I thought, what a shame that we're not systematically using every piece of data point, every kind of communication we have with our customer from a risk management perspective. And also, it's just like, as a millennial selling insurance over 10 years ago, I was like, the tools just aren't up to snuff with everything else that's out there. So I left my family business, the family insurance agency, and started a technology company called Wunderite to solve that. So Wunderite's the fastest and easiest way to fill out insurance applications from any device, whether it's like an Accord application or a supplemental or a vehicle schedule or a driver schedule. It's just a really delightful experience, which you probably don't necessarily hear people defining insurance as delightful in general. They tend to say insurance is more like a necessary evil.
Yeah, almost never hear it described that way.
Yeah, and that's why we call the company Wunderite. I wanted to bring the wonder back to underwriting. which I do think that insurance is actually, it's a societal good. It's a lubricant of the economy. And so I wanted to, recall that insurance, fundamentally, it's like this human desire to want to protect each other. And so I wanted to kind of keep that, close to us in the name of the company.
Definitely. And that's something I mentioned listening to another conversation you had, and you talked about the societal good, and well, there were two separate issues, but that was something that really resonated with me. Obviously I am an insurance guy, so I'm very biased towards the insurance industry, but well, what's the definition of an entrepreneur? It's someone who takes on risks, like they risk their career, their time, their money. There's other pieces to it. They're collaborators and do these other things. But insurance is one of those things that makes it so they can do that with some confidence. They're taking on a ton of risk. And I think you used the Lloyd of London's, talking about the history behind that and why it was created, or how they would underwrite voyages. So can you tell a little, like, I didn't know much about that, and I don't want to spend a bunch of time on it, but can you share that a little bit about that story, or that background a little bit behind insurance? Because I was interested in that.
Yeah. And I'll take it even one step further back, which is just, if you go back thousands of years, if your neighbor's house burned down, like your neighbors would help, rebuild the house. It was like a home rebuilding agreement. If you go into the Bible and you have the story of, Joseph, the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, like the whole premise of that was that Pharaoh had a dream that the skinny cows were going to come out of the Nile and eat the fat cows. And it was indicative of, hey, they were going to have 7 years of famine, 7 years of good years followed by 7 years of famine. And so what did they do? Well, they had a type of insurance. They put food aside for 7 years, kind of like paying your insurance premium, for a number of years, so that when the bad times came, you would have sufficient reserves to basically pay for the claims, right? You'd have the food available to feed the people. And so I really believe that insurance is fundamentally a human desire to protect each other. And what's happened over hundreds of years, and it's not just in insurance, it's in other industries as well, but you have, this transition from kind of like a mutual rebuilding collective agreement with your friends and neighbors to something that's, a little bit less personal and a little bit more transactional, because we don't all love our neighbors. And so, but I mean, more realistically, it's that if you can shift risk without having to be in these kind of unclear social agreements, but you have a very clear written agreement, it actually allows amazing things to happen with risk transfer. And so over time, whether you were shipping goods down rivers in ancient China and you wanted to separate some of your goods onto a neighbor's ship, so in case anyone's ship sank, like you wouldn't all lose your profits as entrepreneurs, risk transfer or insurance is as fundamental to, entrepreneurship, to your point, as is, banking or other industries. And I think over time, in society, we created things like limited liability companies, corporations, to help people split risk and share risk. And insurance is one of those, concepts as well, where, you just like you can, buy a fraction of a company with a stock and not have to own the entire thing yourself and put your entire net worth at risk. With insurance, it allows you to transfer risk to other entities. And Lloyd's of London was one of the first places where they were doing that systematically with a tremendous amount of data. People like to think that insurance is in the Stone Ages, but in reality, Lloyd's of London was like a data center in the 1800s, and they had a tremendous amount of information. They used to say back then, at Lloyd's, they know the weather everywhere in the world at every time. They know every ship. They know where it is at every point in time. They just had a tremendous amount of data because they were like the original big data industry, and they had to understand risks that you could transfer it, price it, and do it in a way that no one person has to take all the risk on. You can split it up fractionally. And so that continues to this day. And I think not only does it continue to this day, but I think that as a society, we're getting used to more and more, kind of microtransactions where you can, you don't even have to buy a car anymore. You don't have to buy a house. You can rent an Uber. You can get an Airbnb. You can, in some cities, you can rent a scooter for a few minutes. Yeah. And you can get insurance for your motorcycle by the mile. Like there's all sorts of things you can do where reducing the so to speak, the cost of ownership fractionally, and insurance is a structural way of allowing that to happen.
Definitely. Well, and something you kind of touched on there, I feel like with it becoming more transactional, like it's mostly a positive that there's access for everybody and it's easy. But it also has made it to where people are less aware. It is just, I'm spending money for this piece of paper I need a lot of the time. Rather than seeing it as, no, the person that you're giving those funds to is taking on your risk. You're sharing that risk with the group, which is a less eloquent way of putting it the way you did through that story. But I just, really just trying to drill that home. It's like, this isn't throwing money down a black hole unless you need it. There's really overall societal benefit to doing this.
I mean, if you think about it, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just saying, if you think about it, like, if you're a young, relatively healthy person in your 30s, you can buy $1 million of life insurance for, I don't know, a few $100s a year. And you think about that, and it's almost mind boggling, where it's like, if I die, someone's going to pay $1 million tax free for just a few $100s a year. And it's like, that is an amazing product. I think that, generally in society, we're surrounded by amazing products. I was just down in Austin, Texas last week. I went paddleboarding on the Lady Bird River. I think it's called the Lady Bird River. Great time. But I just remember sitting there thinking, I'm like, we live in an age where, you can just rent a paddleboard. All you need is like a Bluetooth speaker and like a phone.
Yeah.
And a drink, with you can have an iced drink on the river and a little, cooler cup, and you can just hang out, cruise down the river. You can know where you are at all times. You can listen to any song that's ever been created.
Yeah.
At your fingertips. Everything's on batteries and waterproof. And it's like, we just have such amazing products available today across so many industries. Whether it's, if you're into cars, if you're into TV, or, like the latest and greatest on Netflix or Disney, whatever, or Hulu, like we just have anything you want at your fingertips. And I think insurance is one of those things that has gotten better over time, and it's a fantastic product, but it is easy to forget, to your point, some of the benefits. But I think, for those people who've been around for, a few years, who've been in business, who've seen other people lose their businesses, and to insurance agents, when you've paid some pretty large claims and you've seen it make people whole, like I've seen in my own life, and in my own family as well, it's a wonderful product.
Yeah. We see our carriers pay out $200,000, $500,000, $400,000 claims without batting an eye. Obviously, they want to make sure it's an insurable thing, but they're, believe it or not, they're happy to pay that when it's time to pay that. Like, that's what they're there for, and we see it all the time. And you're right. Just seeing someone be made whole in the middle of just a disaster. There's all kinds of other pieces to it it's going to be an inconvenience and time and all that stuff. But it is just, those are the times where it's never fun to deal with claims, but you feel good seeing someone get taken care of.
And I think I actually, it's funny. I don't even use the word claim. I just talk about, like, hey, when your business burns to the ground, like, where do you want to get the money to get started again?
Yeah.
And I've seen this in our business where we've had multiple organizations. I mean, you see it in the news all the time. Some like, oh, that local business caught fire, or there's an explosion. There's one here in Boston recently where a pharmaceutical company, or some sort of a manufacturing thing, the thing blew up and it like shot in the air hundreds of feet and killed somebody. And and it's like, how does this happen in 2023? It's like, hey, like, accidents happen. And as long as the wind blows and the river flows, like, you're going to have issues. And I think you're seeing that with wildfires. You're seeing that with catastrophe issues. You're seeing it with people who don't pay attention when they're driving their cars, and they don't pay attention when they're walking across the sidewalk. Like, there's challenges. Ideally, there's great product to come solve it. And insurance is just one of the ways of splitting up some of the risk to make people whole. When you see that, for somebody who's put their whole life into building something, and to lose it and then have a product that makes you whole, like, it's a wonderful product.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, thanks for giving that background. I know I kind of took us off on a tangent with the Lloyd's of London theme, but I think it's definitely valuable to talk about that stuff. But back to kind of, you were touching on the experience essentially for the insurance buyer. And that's really, I mean, the problem that Wunderite, it seems like it's solving, is definitely beneficial to us as agents. It's going to make our life easier. And then it's also going to solve the issues of the data capture you're talking about and all that. But can you touch a little bit about kind of what the traditional commercial insurance buyer's experience has been leading up to now, and how, I mean, I know it's changing, but it's still got some room for improvement. So can you shed light on that?
Yeah. So to explain, I think Wunderite at a high level, I think if you just recall the time when you used to, if you wanted to listen to one of your favorite songs, you have to go to the store, buy a CD, put the CD in the CD player, and like skip through the songs to listen to like the one favorite song that you wanted to have. Yeah. Insurance is kind of like that today when you're filling out insurance apps as an agent. If you want to get the right insurance application, you kind of have to know, what insurance company do I go to find, let's say your friend wants to buy, I don't know, a cyber insurance policy. You kind of have to know, which insurance company do I go to? Which one is the appropriate one for this type of risk? Mm-hmm. Because different companies have different types of risk. And then, you have to like email an underwriter and ask them for the application. This is before you're even sending it to your customer. With Wunderite, we've digitized over 4,000 insurance applications, and we've indexed them kind of like your phone has with Spotify today. Mm-hmm. So you could be just like with Spotify, floating down the river in Austin, on a paddleboard, and say, oh, I need to send an insurance app to somebody. You can just type in cyber, and instantaneously Wunderite's finding all the different cyber apps that are potentially relevant. You could type in any kind of a search term that's relevant. And then in 2 seconds, you could send it to your customer. You could send them a form. And best of all, even though it's a PDF, which none of us really want to do PDFs on our phones because you got to pinch and zoom. Mm-hmm. You can fill it out right from your phone. We have intuitive web form that displays in the phone. If you have it on your screen, there's a web form side by side of PDF. We have a lot of technology to automatically fill in some amount of the application, because nobody likes answering 100 questions. Every year they renew their insurance. And so we make this whole process easy, not just for the insurance agent, but really for the end customer, where if you think about the days before DocuSign as an example, if you wanted something signed, you'd have to agree on a place to meet up and drive to meet somebody in person, or you would have to, send something with FedEx to get it signed. Mm-hmm. And then with DocuSign, you just send them a link and they log right in and they sign it in 2 clicks. Now with Wunderite, it's taking it one step further, where not only can you sign things right from any device, you can fill out the entire application. You can basically process an entire insurance renewal. In fact, I've done this with my family business with an organization that's paying over $750,000 a year in insurance premium. And we've kind of done the entire renewal, on Wunderite, which you can access from any device. And so really it's just making the whole process much easier. And by removing the friction, by removing all that transactional stuff, it gives us more time to spend on identifying risk and on building the business relationship with our customer, which is really what I think a lot of people in the industry want to do. We don't love filling out apps. Our customers don't love filling out apps, but we do need to gather the data to do our best work for them. And so Wunderite just makes it easier to remove the friction, gather the data, and then help the insurance agents put together a top of stack submission every time, so they know that they're going to be the best representation for their customer, the first person to market, and the most likely to win the business.
Definitely. That's huge. I mean, if I had heard this when I transitioned to the independent agency side, because I was an Allstate guy when I started out in insurance and then transitioned to commercial lines, and that was in 2019. And I was shocked by coming from, other sales backgrounds. Like, we were just using whatever the latest technology was. If a new thing came out, that's what we were using with our customers. And then, from my experience, you talked about, like, I had to do that. I had to call all my underwriters or go to all the account managers in my agency, because especially as a newer independent guy, I don't know what markets do what, or, and it changes every quarter or every 6 months. And so it would be sometimes a multi-day process just to get the application that I needed. And then I wasn't even sending them a fillable PDF in some cases. I was sending them a document they had to print and handwrite in answers for, or I had to go in and add fillable boxes for it, which is just I don't know. I'm whining here, but it was a nightmare. It was really like, it was almost enough. I wonder if some people have quit this industry because of that. Like they get into it and because it's so much friction on top of it already being a hard thing to establish yourself with.
Yeah, and I can tell you, guaranteed, not only people quit. I mean, the industry has traditionally struggled to attract people, and I think part of it is it's like it's a complicated product.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you have to learn some real complicated legacy softwares, and so it's no wonder it's like, hey, forget about this. It's not worth it. And I think, and look, it's like, what is our highest and best use as people trying to achieve something? It's like mapping out forms to make them fillable. It's like, can't somebody else do that faster and better at scale? And that's basically what we've done. We made it faster and better at scale, and we removed the friction so that agents and customers can focus on what's most important.
Awesome. Yeah. It's definitely, again, it's problems I've experienced, very painful problems that I've experienced a lot in this industry, and my customers have had too. So I was definitely excited when I learned about what you were doing. I know of some other similar products, but none that compile everything in the way that yours do, and none that, say I fill out a Philadelphia outdoor guide app, it's going to capture the FEIN, the name, all that stuff, and then any other app that I pull up in the system. Correct me if I'm describing this wrong, but it looked like it would save that and put it into the other apps that you needed to fill out.
Yeah, no, there's quite a few things we can do, but yeah, we can pull in third-party data. We can import data from systems of record, like your agency management system or a sales CRM. So we're importing all this data along with third-party data sources, and then using that to pre-fill insurance applications. And one of the biggest challenges we had is once you've built this forms library, how can you map data between forms? And it actually gets really technical because you're making what's called a material representation, which is like something that could be, if your building burns down and you go to court,
it's a legal document.
Did you make a right representation or not? And so we've built a no-code engine at Wunderite, both to digitize forms and then also to map forms between each other. So part of the process, of course, of buying insurance, if you want to have competitive pricing, is you want to make sure that you've approached a few insurance markets that really like that type of business. The challenge, of course, is everybody has their own application. And so as a salesperson, you're now spending your time doing this not just one time with your customer, but when you get back to the office, you're typically filling out 2, 3, 4 applications to make sure you fill out an app for each market. And so Wunderite can actually do some of that cross-form mapping. So you can answer one form, you're automatically filling out other forms at the same time.
Awesome. Yeah, that's immensely valuable, again, for someone in my role and for the customer dealing with someone like me. So it's good to hear that we are progressing in the industry, and good to see that you're contributing to that. So I do want to transition more into kind of the startup process and you going from, the insurance side to I'm gonna do this, and maybe get some advice from you for other people that maybe they're not even in insurance, they're just in an industry where they identify a problem and they're like, I want to collaborate with someone to solve this problem. And with you, I know I'm kind of leading the witness here, but you actually learned coding before you started doing these things, right? So you actually know how to build the products themselves. Is that accurate?
It's accurate to an extent. I think in the early days, I'd be like, yes, I am a self-taught engineer, but I think as you get good at anything, you realize how bad you are at it.
Yeah.
So I think for context, I played a lot of video games when I was younger. I was like self-taught, hacky, building websites. And when I was in business school, I really wanted to build this business. I made it my mission to build this business. And I retaught myself software engineering. And, I was at school during the day, and then at nighttime, I was like cranking out my homework. And then up till midnight, 1 a.m., many nights, just like reteaching myself like how to build software. And the great thing is you have YouTube today, and you have so many tools that just make it so much easier. And even now you have, Chat GPT and Google Bard and like tools to make it even easier to find the solutions. Sure. Even from when I started back in 2017, like relearning. But I was just so motivated to make this happen. And the reality was, at the time, and probably still this day, it's not easy to find a software engineer who's really talented that also wants to, work for free on your idea.
Yeah.
And so I had to teach myself to do that just to get things started.
Okay. And yeah, so that sounds, I'm impressed by that. That's amazing. But I also know most people listening don't want to go down that path, even if they do see and so, and you already hinted on the challenges of finding a good software engineer that will be bought in and want to work with you. But do you have any tips on what that collaboration process might look like, or places, or even forums or communities where people could reach out to connect with people to help them? Like, hey, I've got an idea. I have no idea how to turn it into a product.
It's a challenge. I mean, it's like anything. It's like if you wanted to start a pizza business and you have no idea how to get the financing. I mean, how do you do it? It's like, yeah, you got to go do it. You got to go try. Yeah. I think that the great thing today is there's actually some amazing tools that are out there where you don't even really have to code anymore. I mean, I'm actually been experimenting recently, just like building landing pages in code without having to write code using, the Google Bards of the world or the Chat GPTs. But I think outside of that, which is maybe a bit more, it's a bit of, I don't know if it's like a fad, but it's kind of like a new thing that everyone's talking about. Tools like Airtable. And I think Bubble is another one, but Airtable is one that I use all the time. I mean, you can literally build, if you just think 80-20 rule, like what's the 80% of the value you're looking to get? You can build some really powerful applications if you know how to use a keyboard and a mouse on the internet. Just by clicking, if you know how to like click into an Excel spreadsheet, you can build some really powerful things. And I tell people actually, in trying to start a business, the most important decision is not like, can you get somebody who's technically apt to help you out on the software side? It's, can you find the right business partner? Or can you get some traction providing value to your customer or prospective customer? That's the most important thing. And the smartest entrepreneurs that I know, they spend the most amount of time talking to prospects and customers, and building extremely simple solutions, not just diving into the tech. I think as an outsider, you often like, I have an idea for some technology, and the challenge that you face is, how can I build this technology? But that's actually probably not the most common challenge that startups have. Mostly with startups, like, you can build the technology, and you almost need to start with the premise of, assume this technology was built and live today. What would I do next? Like, what's the next thing that I would do with it? Certainly in rare cases, there are things where it's like, no, this technology is truly extremely hard to build. But when we're talking about PDFs on the internet, like that technology has been around for a long time. And so my encouragement to people that are interested in building something would be, get as far as you can with as little actual programming as is needed, and be able to validate and show traction, that you have something that really hits with your kind of target customer.
Yeah, definitely. That's helpful. And you mentioned how that might not be the biggest challenge, but for that person who they're either in the mindset of, I've already got the built product, or they've done what you just suggested. They've built everything they can. They have something they can present to someone. How important from there does being able to wear the sales hat play, or how big of a role does that play into the success? Because most people who start a business like you did can't afford to hire a sales manager or a salesperson. And so,
I mean, I think that if you're building a business, you have to sell everybody. You have to sell your first employees on the opportunity. You have to sell your customers on your solution. You have to sell your investors on like why you're a great business. I mean, you're always selling. So does that mean you have to be formally trained in sales, or like, hey, what's the tactic to close a deal? Like, not necessarily. You just need to be an honest, hardworking person. You don't have to necessarily be formally trained in sales on like how to close a deal. You just need to be good at listening. You need to be good at writing down questions. You need to be good at helping get the information that people need to make an informed decision, and then kind of presenting it in a compelling manner to everybody, whether it's an investor, a customer, or a fellow employee.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And then it also makes sense that once you have closed a couple customers or earned some business, the next sales conversations are going to be so much easier because you actually are able to describe the big picture where the rubber meets the road. Like sometimes you don't know exactly, you have a process, but not exactly what the customer experience is going to look like when they say yes. And so not only can you weed out problems during those first couple of customers, but I have found in selling a complex solution to anybody, when you've actually been through the process from start all the way to finish multiple times, it's so much easier to be that guide for them and really help them know what to expect and paint a picture of what it's going to look like to work with you.
Yeah, I think, humans, as far as painting a picture, humans communicate with stories. And so I think to the extent you can tell a compelling story, as opposed to, just stating some things that are facts, but like not really telling a story. When I was out fundraising and pitching venture capital, I mean, our slide deck is actually like super simple. It's like a Dr. Seuss book.
Yeah.
It's like a Disney story. And in order to tell a really compelling story, it has to be something that's tight and crisp and clean and very easy to digest.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I don't want to get too into that here, but just thought of, have you heard of the 7-sentence Disney story? It's like a whole, and if you watch a Disney movie after you have heard about it, I don't know that I can't explain all the details to you, but if you just Google it, you see every time it starts the same way with a character once upon a time in a place, and but then when you look at good teachers, they're kind of taking you down that same path, and they'll take a really complex idea and you'll kind of feel like you own it after a short time with them because of that. And so
I think a good example is if somebody had they wrote the story of Star Wars and they wrote the story of Harry Potter, and basically everything was exactly the same except the names of the characters were interchangeable. Yeah. And so I think it's the hero's journey. It's the exposition is the beginning. You have kind of like the rising action and the conclusion. And I think, there's trends and structures to a lot of things that make sense for compelling.
Definitely. All right. Well, I want to kind of put you on the spot here for a second. Let's jump into a quick speed round, and obviously we can edit this out if it doesn't work. It's a newer thing that I'm doing. But starting out, are you reading anything good right now?
Yeah, I mean, my work right now is fully dedicated to the company all the time. The books that I'm reading are specifically related to it. So there's 2 books that I'm reading, right? One I just finished is on startup boards. How do you run a board? And how do you do a really good job at it, especially as the company's growing? And there's just a lot to learn about how to run an effective board meeting. I'm sure people that are out there have sat through board meetings that are not enjoyable in the past and don't really move the needle, but I need every board meeting to kind of move the company forward. Yeah. And then another one I'm reading on is pricing. And so I think if you've, for those who are in insurance or in businesses where the price is kind of already set for you, maybe it's a little bit new, but like getting your price right is a really hard thing to do. And it's an extremely important part of running a profitable business long-term. If you get the price wrong, it can destroy your business.
Definitely. Seems like and people usually read that wrong. And at least the people I've dealt with, referred back and forth with, I'll sit down and see what they are doing in their business and how much value they're bringing. And then I'll look at what they charge and I'll say, that's not enough. I feel like that's more common than overcharging. I could be wrong on that, but I see that a lot where people just are afraid to charge what it's actually worth. And
yeah, it's a tricky art.
It's
a tricky art.
Do you know the titles of those books offhand, or?
I think the pricing book is called Getting Price Right by Gerald Smith, and then the startup boards book's just called Startup Boards. I think it's Matt Blumberg, I think is the author.
Awesome. And are you familiar with the EOS model?
Like the entrepreneur operating system? I mean, I've heard about it. What's the 30-second version?
Well, it's too complex. I think it's just an operating system for a business. And I did a whole episode on it with a guy who implements them. But one piece of that I've actually implemented in my sales meetings and in just meeting with referral partners is a 10X or level 10 meeting. And it's the whole idea is that most meetings suck and that they should have been an email. They should have been a text message. And even if you have really good conversations, there's no clear next steps on who's doing what and when it's due by and all that stuff. And so it really helps get all that on track. And then if you do convert it to a customer setting, it just makes you look really good because you've got it together. But yeah, I can send you a copy of the guide that I use for that meeting. You can probably find it online, but it's pretty awesome.
I think whoever comes most prepared to a meeting, I say wins. Not that wins is the right term, but I adhere to relentless preparation. When you come to a meeting, generally speaking, you should know the questions you're going to ask. You should know the next steps and your objectives that you want to have. And the more that you're ready for that and focused you are, like to your point, the more impactful the meeting.
Definitely. And last book related question. Do you have any that you come back to regularly that like you read maybe back in business college or back in the day and just keep coming back to?
The books that I come back to these days are children's books that I read my kids at night.
Yeah.
So probably Dr. Seuss or, something to that extent.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and you made a Bible reference there. That's a good one to come back to too, if you want to get into old school risk management. But
yeah, there you go. Exactly.
But yeah. So, and then the last one on the speed round is there a myth or trend or misconception in our industry or industries, I guess, because it's both insurance and the SaaS industry that you'd like to see die or be corrected?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's like a trend or a myth. I think that one of the learnings that I've had as a founder of a technology company, having been an insurance agent, is that building technology to be really easy, it's challenging. It takes a tremendous amount. Like anybody can build software, but it can be clunky, it can be unclear, the language is all over the place, the design is off. But to build something compelling, like if you think about some of the best tools that are out there, like Uber or Google, it's just a search box. It's like type in an address and hit go, and then like this 5-star car picks you up in minutes and takes you where you need to go, and you say goodbye to the driver and the payment's already, like, everything's out of view for you. It just happens so easy. And so I think that one of the challenges is, as you're, I have transitioned from selling insurance to building and selling insurance software, is how do you build the best software for the insurance industry? And I think that I think that insurance agents, they're demanding. You guys are a tough customer. You want a lot. Don't always want to pay a lot for it. And that's your prerogative. That's our prerogative as customers. And so I think that, I don't know if that's a myth to dispel. It's just, how do you build great software? And it's like, you need to have shared alignment around, what you're trying to do, and, change the industry together.
Yeah. Yeah. The user experience that you touched on is, how many people immediately leave a website or exit out of an app if they get in and it's not. I think it needs to be really obvious what your next step is and what you do. And so kind of like Uber, just punch in an address. So,
right.
Yeah, definitely. Aside from that, what would you say or do you have any other big obstacles or challenges that you personally faced in launching Wunderite? You've touched on pricing and a couple other things, but what have been some of the biggest issues?
No, I think the biggest challenge to building a business can be the very beginning, where it's like, what's the one thing that is like the starting point of when you decide to kind of step off the cliff and take the leap of faith. It's a small thing, but it's a huge thing. How do you say, I'm not going to take a salary anymore and I'm going to put everything into this thing. I'm going to work at it for a decade until it's, it manifests in success or failure.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do everything that I can. And if I fail, it's comes down to me.
Yeah.
And that's probably, I think, the biggest challenge. There's a lot of challenges along the way, no question. But I think that's actually, a journey, a journey of 1,000 miles or whatever starts with the first step. And like, that's kind of, I think, one of the biggest challenges that most people just never take.
Yeah. Yeah. But then, like you said, taking that radical accountability along the way, like, I think that's another place where you'll see a good idea fail, is that something goes wrong and the owner doesn't reflect on how they were the cause of that, or how they contributed to that, or how they just weren't aware. Maybe it was a environmental or legal or environment, and they didn't get how it worked, but it was still on them to know that. And so, yeah,
that's why you got to, build a great team. I think you do your best work when you have a great team around you.
Definitely. All right. Well, I think we are getting to a good place where we can look at landing the plane. But I'd love to hear what your final thoughts are, or anything fun or exciting on the horizon for you and Wunderite.
Yeah, no, I mean, we just came back from the network of Vertafore users. It's a big industry convention. We announced that we have a live integration with AMS 360, which is a top system of record in the industry that a lot of I would say nearly half the agencies in the country are using. And so we integrate both ways with that now. It's like a big announcement we made recently. We've done a tremendous amount of software updates recently. Really excited about that. Not going to necessarily get into the weeds, but feel free to check out our release notes.
Sure.
And just, I think I'm just excited. I'm excited. Summer's here. I'm excited to get out in the water and, work hard and then take some time off as well.
Yeah, definitely. And so is the stand-up paddleboarding, is that a common theme for you, or?
Well, that was, we have one here, but that was down in Austin just while at the conference. I think, we have a paddleboard here and we do some boating as well. So I love to be outside. I feel like, and it's funny because here I am, I work in front of a computer for long hours every day, but I love to be outside. Definitely.
Well, this has been great. I've learned a lot. I know my audience will learn a lot from this. So thanks for joining us today. Before we say goodbye to the audience here, do you have, how do people get in touch with you or find out more about Wunderite? I'm positive, again, while this is a general business audience, there's probably more insurance agents than any other industry listening. And so where would they find you if they are identifying with the headaches that we're talking about and want to look into solutions?
Yeah. If you're an insurance agent, you can just Wunderite.com, WUNDERITE, Wunderite.com. My email is peter@Wunderite.com. Feel free to shoot me a note. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Twitter. If you're not an insurance agent, you probably buy insurance at some point. And so I would say, always happy to get an introduction to your insurance agent. If you don't have an easy way to fill out your apps, you should ask your agent why not and shoot them a link to one.
Yeah. Could make life better for you and your agent.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, thanks again. I will make sure to share all those details in the show notes as far as your website, email, and how to get in touch with you. And, it's been great getting to know you and learning from you. And I will definitely keep in touch and keep track of Wunderite as it grows and progresses in the industry.
Sounds great. Pleasure to connect as well. Thanks, Joshua.